Born in a small village in Fort Ray in the Northwest Territories, Sheikh Saleem Bhimji had a typical Canadian childhood, paved with challenges that come with growing up in a Western society. Having had the opportunity to delve into religious studies at the seminary in Qom, Sheikh Saleem returned to Canada with a refreshed outlook on life and the passion to propagate the message of Islam through English literature. The Islamic Publishing House was born. We visited Sheikh Saleem in Kitchener to find out what inspired such a noble project. Did he always have a love for reading? Were there any awakening moments in his life? During our encounter, we discovered that the love for spreading the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, runs very deep in the Bhimji household. Join us as we take you behind the cover of the Islamic Publishing House.
My name is Saleem Bhimji, and I currently live in Kitchener, Ontario, and I've been here for about 15 years now. I work with one of Canada's largest manufacturer and designer of smartphones full-time, and on my evenings and part-time, I engage in various forms of tabligh and educational and propagational activities within my community and within the greater community of Kitchener-Waterloo. So my parents moved from Uganda, from East Africa to Canada in the late 1960s, early 1970s. And because of the fact that my father's older brother was a medical doctor, and he was actually stationed up in Northwest Territories at that time in the early 70s. So when my parents decided to move to Canada, he basically suggested to them, why don't you come up north? And he would help them get set up with a home, with also a job at that particular time. So they made the move directly from Uganda to a village called Fort Ray in Northwest Territories. They lived there for a few years. I was born up there in Fort Ray. And then eventually my uncle ended up moving south to Edmonton. And obviously my parents gravitated towards that move as well. And they moved south also to Edmonton. And so they basically around 1974, they moved to Edmonton. As far as we know, though, there were no followers of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam, in Edmonton at that time until the exodus came from the community from East Africa. There were probably a few maybe from the Pakistani background, Indian background, but very few that we're aware of. And so when my family moved and subsequently other families moved, they would have been the first few to actually form an official community of believers within that region. I think my parents would describe me as a quiet child. I have some lingering memories of things I used to do as a young boy. I don't think I was mischievous, and that's at least my opinion of myself. My mom and dad may beg to differ on that area, but I recall being very quiet, very reserved, very shy, really keeping to myself, just playing with whatever possessions we had at that time.
Having grown up in a city with a very small Muslim community, we asked Sheikh Saleem to shed some light on his experiences as a Canadian teenager.
Growing up in Edmonton, and again being from a city where there was a very small Muslim community, very small Muslim congregation, I think like many young boys and girls, I personally got, I guess, pulled by the currents into the mainstream society. And really my role models at that point in time were unfortunately not religious figures, right? They were the people you see on television, in the movies, the people who were involved in pop culture. And because the Muslim community was so small and youth who were of my age were very few within my geographic area, so we didn't have a lot of connection with them. And so again, I think I just gravitated towards the mainstream society. And so, the popular hockey players or movie stars or people involved again in pop culture were those whom I looked to be a role model for me, not knowing any better that, that was something greater out there than these individuals. So I think somehow the transformation began, and my introduction to who Malcolm X was as an individual began through pop culture.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. You know, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself who taught you to hate being what God made you.
Right, through the likes of the hip-hop industry, because they used to speak about Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam fervently within their lyrics. And I remember hearing this name Malcolm X, but I had no idea who this man was. And back then there was no internet. You couldn't just type in a keyword and search for him. So I remember going to the public library and trying to find books and articles about Malcolm X. And I found, some information here and there, but it didn't really whet my palate to give me information on who he was. And that's when eventually I heard that he had written his autobiography with the help of Alex Haley, the author of Roots. And so I remember running to find that book, and I remember reading that book cover to cover. And that really was that impetus to begin that change in my own life. Seeing a man like the late Malcolm X coming from what he was in his previous life, we can say, when he was so stuck into the material world, when he was a drug dealer, he was involved in crimes, he was involved in so many illicit things within society. But for him to go through that entire transformation of his life and come out to be a man who is now a leader of a not only a local movement, but it was a international movement to an extent. That really pulled me into that direction, that that change is possible. That we have examples like Malcolm X, we have examples even within the school of Ahlul Bayt, such as Hur, on the soldier who moves over to the ranks of Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura. That if a person is really looking for the truth, Allah will guide that person, right? And definitely that was evident in so many of these experiences that we had seen.
After completing his secular studies in electronic repairs, Sheikh Saleem was in pursuit of further Islamic knowledge and took the opportunity to study at the Theology Seminary in Medina, New York, and from there carried on his studies at the Seminary of Qum for a couple of years.
So a progression in life, I guess, it happens to people at different levels, right? All of us have that awakening sometime in our life. Sometimes people have an accident and they realize a new calling in life. Sometimes people have some, fortune come upon them and they change their outlook and perspective on life. For me, the change, it came about through many different ways, right? It was through being introduced to books after being, again, away from books and literature for 5 or 6 years during my teenage years, being introduced to books such as Then I Was Guided by Dr. Tijani, such as Najul Balagha of the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali, peace be upon him, and many other books. That began that quest for looking for further knowledge. A lot of changes in life, a lot of changes, going from Fort Ray to Edmonton to even before New York, getting married, and then moving with my wife to New York, and then with the family going to Iran. They're huge steps in life. It's not like you're moving across the street or from one home to another. You're moving provinces, you're moving countries, and then you're moving continents across the other side of the world. It was a bit of we could say a scary experience at one level, because I had never really ventured outside of Canada up until that point in my life. Sure, I had been to Tanzania for a 2-month opportunity to travel, and to England many times to visit the United Kingdom. But that doesn't prepare you to live in a Muslim environment, in a country where the language is foreign, where the culture is completely unknown to you, where the food and everything about the environment is so strange. So we obviously came across a lot of challenges, right? It wasn't an easy time, definitely, right? Our time in Qum was quite limited. And so really basically our time was only to, I think, grasp an overall understanding of the various religious sciences we had. And so unfortunately we didn't have the opportunity to delve deeper into any specific topic per se. But if I look at a lot of the readings I've done since I've returned back from Iran, and obviously continue my own personal development and personal studies back here at home, I would say jurisprudence, the fiqh of Islam, is one of the areas where I've had, I guess, a stronger inclination towards. Obviously, because the ahkam, the fiqh, the jurisprudence that we have in our books is something that applies to us on a day-to-day basis, right? It's not just praying and fasting, but there's so many other aspects of the rules that we need to put into a daily implementation. And living in a society which is obviously predominantly non-Muslim, that poses its own challenges and complexities. So coming back, I've tried to focus my studies on that particular area. And other than that, also, I've also had an interest with the Quran. Not only obviously recitation of the Quran, but trying to understand the various levels of the Quran. So going through different commentaries that are available that we have, that our scholars have written, to delve more deeper really into the word of Allah. And not only, delve into it from the historical perspective, but also what it means for us today in the 21st century, and what is how can we implement Quranic teachings within our day-to-day lives.
In the year 2000, Sheikh Saleem returned to Canada with a refreshed perspective and the aim of propagating the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, on the ground, not only working alongside local community members, but also interacting with the non-Muslims in the wider society.
One of the reasons why Allah gave us the Quran is to make a change in our lives, to become better human beings, better believers in Islam.
Through his hard work and dedication, Sheikh Saleem secured the position of Director of Publications at a non-profit religious institution in the United Kingdom, which enhanced his experience in the publication field. Equipped with his vast knowledge and experience, Sheikh Saleem was ready to explore the idea of starting his own independent work, leading to the foundation of the Islamic Publishing House.
One of the inspirations for myself for translation work was my own observance within the Muslim community of a lack of literature in English. Right, I came back from Iran for my studies, and I was seeing that there are a lot of books already in English that, first of all, weren't translated accurately, or the content wasn't edited properly. I also noticed a lot of areas where we were lacking in English, in the English literature, right? So I noticed that there were books, for example, in the commentary of the Quran that we didn't have in English. We didn't have major books of supplications in English. We didn't have books even on day-to-day life as a Muslim, right? How to do basic things, time management, managerial skills, how to, be a good Muslim administrator. So that was really my thought, is that, we are lacking in so many areas in terms of publications. And reading being one of the channels to which we, obviously are able to take in knowledge. That really led me to go on this quest to be able to start to translate books, and again find those books that are required, or those subjects that are required, and to begin to put those into English. So the start to finish process of a book, there's a lot of steps, and when you look at a book that's on your shelf, the reader has to appreciate that literally thousands of hours have gone into the publication and the printing of that book. Obviously, the author or the translator, they have their own work aside to write the book or translate the book. They would have editors and copy editors involved in editing and reading the book for the particular audience. But once that book comes to myself, for example, and I'm commissioned to now work on it, one of the first things that I have to know is I need to know the book. I need to know the content of the book. And on every occasion, I would recommend the author to give me an entire copy of their book in PDF format, so I can read the book and become aware of what the book is about, because that will help me in the cover design. It'll help me with the internal layout of the book. I really need to know what the subject matter is, to think and put myself into the mind of the author or translator and the reader, that when they see the book on the shelf, that the cover represents what is inside that book, right? So the very first step for me is to read the book cover to cover as much as I can, to get a feel for what the content is. Once I'm comfortable that I know what the book is about, then obviously comes to put my thoughts together of what would a cover look like, or what should the cover look like for this project. It may be just taking a pen and a paper and sketching out thoughts of what I would like the book to look like. Eventually, I'll take it to the computer and put a few different samples together. And that process may take a couple of weeks to find imagery that can be used for the book. That is something that the author also has in their mind, so I'll have to liaise back and forth with the publisher to make sure that what my thoughts are also are in line with what they're looking for. And so I put a few samples together just for the cover aspect, and then we'll run those by the individual and get their feedback on it. Eventually, we'll get to a point where we'll put maybe 5 or 7 covers side by side, and they'll choose 1 or 2. And eventually it'll be, shortlisted to the cover that they want. And then from there, we have little aspects of maybe color modifications, tweaking certain things on the cover to make it exactly what they want it to be like. At the same time, however, though, obviously the rest of the book is still needing to be done, right? So they've given me a file of just words, right? They may say, well, I need all of the Arabic ahadith within this book. I need the ayat of the Quran included in the Arabic. I've had customers who have said, well, I need poetry which is quoted by the original author in Urdu or in Farsi. So I'll need to go and find those if they don't provide them to me and have them also included within the book. So at the same time a cover is being designed, I'm also doing the interior work of the book, putting the text together. And that also is difficult because, again, every publisher wants to have their book look unique inside as well. So they don't want to use the same font that they've used for other books. So they don't want to use the same font and typeface that other publishers have used. So we'll have to find something that appeals to them and that is easy for the average person to read. That process also can take weeks to maybe months to actually perfect, right? And so really all of these steps, some of them run concurrently, one with the other. But ultimately all of those things finally culminate in a final project being completed, the cover and the layout. And then obviously we go to the stage of printing a book. So we determine quantities, we determine the paper quality, a lot of other things that go in terms of the printing until we can actually get that book sent to print and on its way to be produced for the client.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't see any other way to do it just because of the fact that, again, I'll go to page 118 and you'll see at 118 that the footnote number 29 continues up right up until the end of the page, and then footnote 30 is beginning here. So there was really no other way to link the two together, other than combining.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So in this section, so it's true. In the first section of the book, I want it's supposed to read fluidly. So the paragraphs of the translation and of the Arabic are divided the way you're talking about, and so those have to be kept together. But that's not an issue there because there's no commentary, so it all just flows continuously.
And there'll be no CD with this book, will there?
No, there's no need for the CD anymore. Now we'll just do QR codes, and they can link them to. We'll link the reader to our website where they can just download the file.
Okay, perfect. It's I can say this, I think, is that translation is not just knowing 2 languages. I think, to put it very simply and blunt. People think that, I know, language X and language Y, so I can translate and I can, make people understand. And I think experience has shown that just knowing 2 languages doesn't make you a translator, right? You need to know the nuances of the language. You need to know how that the host language and the recipient language, how both of them use words and terminologies. You have a lot of examples where in one particular language they'll have a phrase or an idiom. And you can't just render that into another language because it wouldn't make sense. As an example, we say in English that this person is a chip off the old block. Right now, if you were to translate that into another language, it would probably sound preposterous, right? What does that mean, right? But we know that it doesn't mean the literal a chip off the old block. It means something much deeper and profound. So it's not enough just to say, okay, I know Persian or I know Arabic and I know English, so I can sit and translate, right? And we've seen people, unfortunately, like this, that they think that they know 2 languages, they have access to an online dictionary, let's say, and they can go and translate a book. To give you an example, as we had seen a person who had a book which he was translating from Arabic into English. So he had the Arabic book in front of him, he had his notebook that he was translating into English with, and he had a dictionary in front of him. So literally he would read a sentence in Arabic, look up the words he didn't know in the dictionary, and then write the sentence in English, word for word, basically. And if you read that translation, you realize that this work really made no sense at all. And in actually certain areas, it was really doing a disservice because it was completely taking theories and concepts out of their true context and putting them into a language which that person had no idea about. So definitely, for a translator, it's not enough just to know the language. They need to know the culture and how that culture uses that language in all of its different aspects.
As we can see, each project requires an incredible amount of time and care to make it successful, whether it is designing a book cover, translating pages, or working on the latest book due to be published in time for the month of Ramadan. Despite having such a busy schedule, family time is central in Sheikh's life. In fact, we quickly discovered that the Islamic Publishing House is very much a family affair.
So my wife and I have collaborated on multiple projects over the last 15 years. I think one of the first books that we did together was a book called A Mother's Prayer. And this was actually produced shortly after our first daughter was born. We were looking at that time, obviously, for a book or, books in English that would give us prayers and supplications to recite when my wife was pregnant. Things that we've been encouraged from the 14 Infallibles to do during the time of the pregnancy. Supplications to read, things that we should be, performing. And we looked at, all of the books that were available, and we really didn't find anything in one comprehensive book. So we had to pull, 4 or 5 books to find the different supplications. And so with the encouragement of one of our community members who really gave us that, that push to do this, we sat down and took all the books available that were printed up until that point in English and said, let's work through this and compile one book that every mother and father can use, or prospective mother and father can use, as they're on the path of trying to conceive a child. And so through that project came this book, A Mother's Prayer, which was and is the very first and probably the only comprehensive manual of prayers and supplications for the Muslim couple that guides them from pre-pregnancy through all the stages of pregnancy up until delivery and even beyond delivery. So how was school today, Madrasa?
Madrasa was good.
Yeah, what'd you guys do?
Well, we did Quran class and we read some surah from the Quran. And then our teacher talked to us a little and taught us some things.
Okay. How was Quran class? What'd you guys recite?
We recited some surahs. We had to memorize some surahs. And I'm doing Surah Mudathir. So we read those surahs. And then our teacher saw how much we had memorized.
Oh, wow. So it sounded like you had a good day at school, at Madrasa today then?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Real good day.
Looking forward to next week again?
Sort of, yeah.
Definitely with the publishing of books, we've tried to make it a family affair, that we all get involved in the process somehow. Whether it be, for example, when I have completed the translation of a project, my wife will be the chief editor for the book. So she reviews the content of all the books that I edit or anything that I write. Actually, even when we work on books for children, so for example, we have published a book called The Alif Ba Ta of Karbala to teach children the Arabic language through the event of Karbala. So because that book was aimed at children at an age of, let's say, age 4 and up, we wanted to make sure that children and young boys and girls who read it are able to understand the story and also are appreciative of the art within the book. So we had my daughter also, being that she is within that age group, we had her to review the book and look through it. Also other books that we have worked on and we're currently doing for children, we have my daughter also feed her input into the project. So we make sure that everybody in the family is involved, and I think that definitely strengthens the bonds because we're working on something that we all feel passionate about together. It's not just me, enclosed in my office doing the work and neglecting the family. Know that we're all actually being a part of this mission to, again, promote the teachings of Islam as taught by the Ahlul Bayt, and that each of us have that share in some portion of the work to contribute to each project. So our latest publication that came out is Ramadan Reflections, and because this was funded by donors from across the world, what we have done is we obviously acknowledge their donation through sending them a complimentary copy of the book. So right now what we're doing is applying gift stickers to each of the books, and once we've completed this process, then we're going to basically package these up and send them over to those people who have donated for this project. Family support is definitely is essential in any part of life. If you don't have family support, if you don't have the family backing, if you don't have peace of mind at home, nothing can happen. That goes with any aspect. If you look at the life of our Prophet, he had Lady Khadija, peace be upon her, on his side to help in the mission. If you look at Amir al-Mu'mineen, for example, he had Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her, alongside him to help him. And many other examples all throughout history that we have, right? So definitely a family, that unit has to be strong and united together for anything to come out of to be successful. And so definitely, having the support of my wife and my daughter has been instrumental, I think, in bringing the publishing house to where we are today. Not only in terms of the help, editing and proofreading and these things, but even just simple things. For example, realizing that sometimes I have deadlines that I have to meet, right? There are things that are happening that, one of our clients has a project and he needs it done in a certain time. And sometimes that means foregoing vacations, not going on a long weekend out of town, or me sleeping late, little things like that. That are little, but at the same time, they're enormous in the sense that it brings me that peace of mind that I'm able to complete my work on time and get the projects that I have promised to my clients out in a timely fashion.
Meeting Sheikh's close-knit family inspired us tremendously. Family support is crucial in any aspect of life. And what better way to strengthen the family bonds than in the propagation of the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. Muhadditha's love for Islam manifests itself in many ways, one of which is through the writing and recitation of poetry. We were invited to a celebratory event in honor of Lady Fatima, peace be upon her, at the Husseini Madrasa in Kitchener.
And next I want to call Sister Muhadditha forward. She has a poem that she's written that she wants to present about Fatima Zahra. Let's also welcome her up with one loud salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, please.
This is a poem of Baby Fatima. Baby Fatima was born into a holy family in Mecca on the 20th of Jamadi al-Thani. Her father, the last prophet, was a very special person because he got the Quran from Allah as a revelation. Her mother was Khadija, the first woman to accept Islam, and her husband was Ali, who was the very first Imam. Bibi Fatima has many titles by which she is known. Through these, many of her amazing qualities are shown. She was patient with everything, so she was known as Sabira. She was also very pure, so the people called her Tahira. Umm Abiha was her title because she was like a mother to her dad. She would take care of her father and cheer him up when he was sad. Because of working so hard, her hands got blisters and her clothes got very dusty. So she went to the Prophet for a maid, but instead he gave her the famous tasbih. Even though she was young, Bibi Fatima had many children. They were named Hassan, Hussein, Zainab, Kulthum, and Mohsin. When an enemy pushed the door on her, Mohsin died before being born. Later, Bibi Fatima died and her whole family began to mourn. To this very day, we hold gatherings to cry and remember her, and wait for Imam Mahdi to come and establish peace forever.
So today is actually a very extremely important day where we're celebrating the birth of the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her. And so one of the things that we've tried to do is ensure that our children, the Muslims of this new generation, is that they have an appreciation for Muslim culture. Growing up obviously in Canada and North America, we are very isolated. And when it comes to celebration of holidays, it's only the holidays of the culture that we live around. So they know Easter, they know Christmas, they know Thanksgiving because they're official days off from school. But what we try to do is incorporate the Islamic festivals within our madrasa system. So today, for example, that we mark the birth of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, we had speeches by the children, we had poetry by the children, we had the children recite the Quran, and then we finished off with cake and celebration. So for me, this helps forge an identity that our children can have in the religion of Islam. Growing up, when I was brought up as a young boy in Canada, we didn't have these sorts of celebrations, and so our religion was only limited to the mosque setting, and we didn't really have a way to enjoy the festivities per se. And so this is beautiful because it gives our children shows the importance to our children to consider the importance of the religious festivities that we have. Whether it be the days of Eid, the days of the birth anniversaries of the infallibles, it shows them that we also can have fun and celebrations within our religion, and that there's a good time to, there's something to look forward to when these events happen. As you can see, they're having fun, they're eating cake, they're talking to one another, they are sharing in a celebration that normally they might not have been able to participate in, otherwise. So it's a great way for them to really enjoy the fun aspect of the religion as well.
Later on, we caught up with Muhadditha and asked her what inspired her to write this beautiful poem on the Lady of Light.
My name is Sheikh Saleem. I am 11 years old, and I live in Kitchener, Ontario, and I go to W.T. Townsend Public School. I found some different books that had information about Bibi Fatima, and then I jotted down different information pieces about her, like her birth and death date, where she was born, some of her different titles, and then I put them all together, and I managed to find words that rhymed, and I made it into a poem, and it took a while, but I managed to do it. I got the inspiration from my parents, who helped me through it, and if I was stuck or I was starting to get a little frustrated, they would help me.
Alif Ba Ta is an exciting children's book that was put together and produced by Sheikh Saleem and his family. The incredible amount of thought and detailed effort that went into particularly the design and content of this book speaks for itself.
So Muhadditha has been instrumental in choosing the pictures for me, helping us with the poetry as well, and being that she is of that young age, she's able to read it and really tell us that, children of my age won't understand this, so let's water it down and make it more palatable to their level of understanding. So once the young boy or girl opens up the book, Alif Ba Ta of Karbala, they're presented with this image of the title of the book in blocks. And obviously young boys and girls are accustomed to playing with blocks as a child, and so that's what we wanted to represent to them, that this is going to be a very child-friendly book just by looking at the introductory page. And then on the side you see the two golden minarets of the dome of Imam Hussein, of the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. As we work our way through the actual book, the children have an opportunity to actually write their name in the book, so it personalizes the book for them. And there's also a little pledge that they make that as lovers and followers of the Ahlul Bayt, that they will do their best to learn the alphabet and also read more about Imam Hussein and Karbala. So that gives them a sense of ownership of the message of Imam Hussein and of their quest for Islamic knowledge. We then went into just a word from the authors to give the parents of the book a brief background on the book and why we find it important to carry on the message of Karbala through this medium. And hopefully that the parents read this and convey the content of it to their children. Once the book begins, we have a lot of elements on the page, and obviously the most striking element is the colorful visuals. So, for example, here we have the name of Allah in Arabic, and so what the book is based upon is teaching the Arabic alphabet. So you have the letter Alif there on the right corner, and then you have a poem which my wife and I had written specifically for this book, taking every letter of the Arabic alphabet and tying it somehow to the message of Imam Hussein. So as you can see where it says Alif is for Allah, the Lord of Imam Hussein. He began his noble movement in Allah's sacred name. So the children learn a bit about that Arabic letter. They see the visual of the name of Allah in Arabic, and they tie that into the letter of the alphabet. And that continues through the book, where we bring an image of the event of Karbala with the Arabic letter, and then we take that same Arabic letter and develop it into a poem that the children can learn. They can learn the poetry of this book, but also learn the story of Karbala and the Arabic letters to help them in the recitation of Quran and to recite the supplications.
Sheikh Saleem is also a prominent public speaker for the past 15 years, having served various communities in different parts of the world, including North America, Africa, and Europe. We were curious to know how his experience as a public speaker motivated him in his work at the Islamic Publishing House.
Public speaking is one of my passions that I never had in life. I was always scared to death to be in front of a camera or in front of an audience, and so it's always been a challenge for me to get in front of an audience and present on any topic really. But coming back from our studies, I realized at that point also that there were very few people who could speak English, be articulate in the English language, but also who were born and brought up in this environment. And that really became that impetus and push for me to take upon this weighty responsibility of speaking in public settings. I personally feel that if I go to a lecture and I just learn, again, historical facts and figures, I personally have not benefited from it. But I think and what I try to impress on the audience is the fact that these individuals that we take as role models are not only for 1400 years ago, but that we can learn from them today. And so I try to extract a message that my audience can relate to and they can put into practice when they go home that evening, or that they can take to work, or they can take to school with them, and they can actually change their lives and make their lives better, and hopefully also show people around them that their religion is not a stagnant religion. It's not just 1400 year ago religion, but there is a practical implementation and action that they can put into their lives. I've met some very interesting people in my journeys around the world, lecturing and talking about the Islam and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. And I think every time I go to a different community and I meet a person or meet people within the different communities, they all give you the new vigor and energy to continue what you're doing back at home. I'll give you one prime example. When I had gone to South Africa many years ago for the month of Muharram, I remember lecturing in a very small physical building, very small building, but people with very large hearts, I would say. And I remember after one of the lectures, maybe on the 5th or 6th night of the month of Muharram, an elderly gentleman came to me with his son. The man was probably in his 60s or 70s, and his son was mid-30s. And he came to me in tears, just bawling his eyes out like a young baby. And he finally regained his composure, and he started talking to me. And he says that this is the 3rd or 4th year that I have actually heard about the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He says, so many years, for my entire adulthood until that point in his life, he says, I was a follower of another branch of Islam, and I didn't know Imam Hussein. And he comes to me with a sincere heart, and he's saying that now that I've reached this old age in my life where I'm, 1 foot in the grave, I finally found the Ahlul Bayt. And basically, showing me that although he lost so much of his life, but just that little exposure he's had to the Ahlul Bayt's teachings, that really would give him fulfillment in his life. So meeting people like him, who have been away from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt for their entire life, and they finally come and meet this beautiful, pristine family, and they regard their entire life before that as being just wasted, as wasted lifespan. It gives me a sense of first of all, self-reflection, that do I consider the Ahlul Bayt to be as this man considers them to be? And it gives me that push that, that there are millions of people like him out in the world today, people who might be following some other religion outside of Islam, people who might be following some path within Islam but don't know the Ahlul Bayt. And if this man in his, in a time of his life where he feels he is about to leave this world, that if he can find the truth, that there's millions of people out there who are like him, and that if myself and obviously people much greater than myself are able to continue to propagate this message, that there will be people who come out of the woodworks and who will realize that there is a man like Hussein, there is a family like the Ahlul Bayt, and that there is a Islam that is something that which they have been missing, and that really is probably one of the main driving forces in my own life to continue, whether it be lecturing or also continuing with the publication of books, right? To make sure that there is no excuse for anybody on the Day of Judgment, that they can say, well, we didn't know about the Ahlul Bayt.
Besides public speaking, Sheikh Saleem has a plethora of other responsibilities. He is also the head of the content committee for alislam.org. He oversees the review and approvals of all digital content for the website, and also offers several online courses on various topics at the Academy for Learning Islam. We asked Sheikh the secret to his productive and balanced approach in life.
So as we know, each of us only has 24 hours in the day to do whatever it is that we have to do. And so for me, one of the greatest challenges, as with anybody else, is how do I manage my day and juggle all of my responsibilities between my full-time career, between my tabligh, my propagation work, my business, to the publishing of books, and also the family. So what I've learned to do really is prioritize those things that matter the most to me, and also prioritize them based upon what can be done at a certain time. So as an example, I know that I need to pray my daily prayers on their own time, on their specific time, so I make time for that. When I come home, I know that I only have a few hours before my daughter goes to bed. But my work, for example, for the book publishing can be done at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. So what I try to do is make sure that those things that can be done in that particular time period are done then. And so if that means that I leave things to be done later on at night or next morning, early in the morning after the morning prayers, then I do so accordingly to make sure that I give everything that is required its own time and that I don't sort of miss any of my responsibilities within the day. So I feel it's very important as Muslims that we give time to our family, right? Our spouse, our children. As we know, Allah says that these are our trust, they're amanat given to us. And so we definitely have to give them their appropriate time. So with my daughter, with Muhadditha, I try to take time out during the day to engage in activities that she likes to enjoy. So although there's things that I like to do to pass my time, I realize that now this is her time. So in the summer, for example, when we come out in the park here for a walk or to ride bikes, I try to make time for that. Whether we go to the park and play on the swings, I'll also go for that. In the wintertime, obviously things change because the climate is different. So I try to do things that she enjoys in the wintertime. Going, sledding in the winter, going tobogganing on the hills. But really the goal is to do things that she enjoys. And also that obviously I enjoy as well, but that's something that makes her happy. And that, brings out that happiness within her.
As we came towards the end of our journey, we were eager to know the future goals for the Islamic Publishing House.
The future for the Islamic Publishing House, I think, is very bright. We have a lot of goals, I think, that we want to reach. We also, I think, because we're embarking on new technology nowadays with the smartphone, with tablets, I think another area that we really want to get into directly rather than outsourcing it, we want to be directly involved in the creation of digital content. The physical book is not losing popularity. It's still there. People are still purchasing physical books, but more and more as society is moving to a digital world, an online world, they're demanding newer ways to take in that same information. Right? So we've thought about and we're trying to explore, again, ways that we can create our own digital content, take the books that we've already published and translated and make them available in a digital format through apps, for example, for smartphones, for book readers. But also another interesting avenue has come upon us, which is through audiobooks. Again, people who commute to work, they might spend an hour, 2 hours a day commuting back and forth. Or maybe they're even driving in their cars back and forth to work and they can't sit and read while you're driving, but you can read, you can listen to an audiobook in your car. So we've already begun work on some of our translations to make them available as audiobooks. So that's another avenue I think that has a great room of growth and opportunity, is to take books which are already translated and basically provide an audio version of that same book. That again reaches a whole new audience, not only people who are commuting, but people who are, let's say, who are not able to see, right? Muslims who are blind and are not able to read from that visual source, that they can easily listen to the audio reading of a book and again benefit from that knowledge which maybe up until now that they have been deprived of. So these are two areas that I think I want to take IPH into the future, to be able to again expand our reach into many other areas where people right now may not be able to benefit from our printed works.
While preparing to head back to Toronto, we asked Sheikh Saleem what his aspirations and dreams for Muhadditha were.
I definitely would like to see my daughter continue in the footsteps of the Islamic Publishing House and to have her bring forth a new generations of authors and translators and publish their works. But at the same time, again, I realize that she is an individual on her own, with her own personality, her own character. Definitely we encourage her to pursue the path of knowledge and to pursue the path of serving the religion of Islam. But ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever path she decides for in life, we would obviously be happy for her. And again, wish the best for her in whatever endeavor she hopes to take on in life.
These awards I have got from Madrasa, most of them. This one I got from my grandparents as an award for Quran memorization. These I got for the end of the year for getting first place, the highest mark in my report card. And this I got for perfect attendance one year. And this I got participation for a competition that we had. It was a Quran competition that we had in the madrasa. This one I also got for the Quran competition. I came second place for amount of minutes recited in Quran.
Having nurtured such a wonderful daughter and instilling in her the love for the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, from a very young age, Muhadditha will, God willing, continue to carry on the message of Islam with great pride and confidence.
I would like to continue writing poems for the love of the Ahlul Bayt. And I would like to write different poems for each of the Imams and the Prophet, because it's really relaxing when I write the poems. I would like to thank them for giving me inspiration through all the troubles and difficulties that I went through. And I would like to thank them for being amazing parents.